Hello, namaste, assalamu alaikum, welcome to Go For Us. And today I've got Aaron, the cricket connoisseur, to discuss the T20 series, which was one of the most one-sided T20 series, three-match T20 series that you'll see in the history of T20 cricket. This is, a hyperbole, but I'm going to say it anyway. Anyways, Aaron, how you doing, man?
All good, to be honest, Asjad. Yeah, I wouldn't stretch it that far. It was the most one-sided ever, but definitely one-sided. India definitely flexed their muscles in this particular T20I series and obviously deserving 3-0 winners. But with that being said, and we'll discuss this probably as the show goes on, there were slight little positives for Sri Lanka, which cropped up time and again in this series, but not quite on a consistent level compared to India in particular, who, as you said, just dominated pretty much from ball one of the series right until the end. But yeah, a very one-sided series. Hopefully the test series is a little bit more competitive, but yeah, in a year, obviously in 2021, where India didn't quite perform as well as they would have wanted to in that World Cup, series like this do just show that they've got some very, very strong weapons in that lineup. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see if they can utilise this to develop some momentum heading into Australia later this year.
Yeah, completely agree with you. And I think the T20 World Cup in Australia is going to be something that they're definitely eyeing with a new setup, with certain new inclusions. But I don't want to talk about India first. I want to talk about Sri Lanka because there's two people. Well, actually, personally, I only want to mention one is their captain, Dassun Shanaka, man. What in the world did he eat in the second and third T20? Because he scored 70 or 30 twice. He's like David Visa, but on steroids. All right, that's exactly what he was. Right, he came in, absolutely hammered the Indian bowling, and I'm thinking to myself, oh, maybe they have a chance. Not in the third T20, but in the second one, genuinely, I think they went up to 180, 183, something like that. And I was quite certain, oh, maybe Sri Lanka can put up a fight. But then obviously India's batting. But let's talk about Sri Lanka first. What are the positives from a Sri Lankan point of view?
Well, first and foremost, definitely Dassun Shanaka. He was absolutely unbelievable in this series. He's finished it as the second leading run scorer, first, of course, for Sri Lanka, with a strike rate of over 190, which is ludicrous, absolutely ludicrous. Fair enough if he'd faced a few balls here and there, but as you said, he had generated these real innings of substance. He was absolutely sensational. And also, him as a captain, I think he is definitely the right option for Sri Lanka heading forward because he's a fighter. He's got a warrior mentality. He doesn't go down without really giving it his absolute all, whether that is with the bats, the ball, or indeed in the field. I think he's a fantastic kind of beacon, actually, for Sri Lanka to build games off of. So for that reason, Dassun Shanaka, without a shadow of a doubt, massive positive for Sri Lanka in this series. And then in terms of the long term, I mentioned with India looking ahead to Australia, I think in terms of Sri Lanka's batting lineup, Dassun Shanaka aside, they've got three settled options with the likes of Pathum Nissanka, Kusal Mendis and Charith Asalanka. I think those guys heading forward, definitely, again, they continue to impress. At times, could they have been better in this series? Yes. But then again, India, tremendously strong bowling attack, tremendously strong outfit in general across all three formats, so you can be a little bit lenient as to why they didn't quite fire compared to Dassun Shanaka. But I think those three in particular, they could be the core of Sri Lanka heading forward into 2022 and beyond. And just one final one is, I'm struggling actually if I would call it a massive positive. I'd say a slight positive was Lahiru Kumara because he got wickets, but he was very expensive. Yeah. At times he was bowling very well, very tight, very within the line and length you want in T20 cricket. Other times, just lost the radar, kind of lost the plot a little bit, to be honest, in particular towards the last stages of an innings. So I would say it was a positive. He finished as the leading wicket taker for Sri Lanka in this series, but just needs to, I don't know, maintain a bit more consistency. It's very easy for us to say that as fans, but I think long term, the economy rate definitely needs to come down below 10 runs and over. Quite expensive in this series.
Yeah, I'd second that. One thing, again, for me, the only positive, and probably the second was Nissanka, because Nissanka, I only found out about a year and a half ago.
Always good.
And yeah, Test cricket, T20 cricket, whatever he plays, he seems to make a solid position for himself. And he's one of those, and again, people might say, why are you comparing him? I'm not comparing, I'm saying he's that type of player. For me, he's a Babar Azam type of player. I think he can take his time and then he can go and score runs at a belligerent pace if he needs to. Otherwise, he can accumulate, he can provide some sort of stability to Sri Lanka, something they genuinely need, right? They have, I didn't realize Gunathilaka was back, by the way. I thought he was still, no, and then I saw the match, I was like, oh, he's back. Didn't know that.
Yeah, he's back now.
So he's an aggressive batsman. Unfortunately, he didn't fire as well as they would have liked this series. But Charita Salanka, we saw him in the World Cup, T20 World Cup. We've seen him over the past year or so. Yeah, absolute class batsman. And unfortunately, from a bowling standpoint, Jaya Wikrama didn't have the best time of it either in this particular series. Very excited about him. I remember when did he get those 7 wickets or something a couple of months ago in Test cricket? And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember him coming in on his debut and picked up a lot of wickets in Test cricket. And I was like, oh, he looks like an exciting prospect for sure. But yeah, there's quite a bit of work that Sri Lanka does need to do. A team that doesn't need to do that much work is India at this stage. And I just want to start off. And the reason why I want to start off because did Shreyas Iyer think that, let me just not have a strike rate under 200 in any of my matches? Like, let's just stick to a strike rate of 200 plus so that everyone realizes I can be number 3 for India, right? And someone asked him literally yesterday, I believe, where do you want to bat for India? My preferred position is number 3. So Virat Kohli, he's coming for you, mate. He's coming. No, he's not. But the way he's batting, wherever he bats, comes in at number 5, scores at 200 strike rate. Comes in at number 3, scores at 200 strike rate. And I loved the fact that he took his time, took about 3 to 4 deliveries, and then he'd just go absolutely ballistic. This is the Shreyas Iyer I remember from IPL 2020, where he scored that 88 off like 20 odd balls. Against Rajasthan, I can't remember who it was against, but he genuinely came in and smashed an 88. And I was like, I'm a fan. This is one of my new favorite batsmen in the world, and he's proving it in international cricket. Sorry, long-winded way of saying, Aaron, India, positives.
Shreyas Iyer, as you've rightfully just said, we can't mention this series without talking about the way in which he just dominated that Sri Lankan bowling attack. You mentioned there 3 back-to-back 50-plus scores, match-winning scores as well. Let's not forget. And you mentioned the temperaments. You mentioned the way in which he composed himself and the way in which he built his innings. Second to none in that Indian side at the moment. He's just so classy. He's got this air of elegance and splendour about his batting. He's wonderful to watch. He really is. And you mentioned the strike rate, and this has been something which people have been critical of Shreyas in the past. 174.4. That's not a bad strike rate, in particular when you're batting at number 3. That is absolutely tremendous. We think of the modern T20 number 3, and you're thinking of a strike rate between 135 and 145. That would be absolutely ideal because you're going to be scoring runs at a decent rate of knots. 174 is what you expect from a number 6 or a number 7. Yeah. And he played like he was finishing off an innings. And that's basically what he did, to be honest. He finished off the innings before Sri Lanka could gain any momentum whatsoever. So for that reason, Shreyas Iyer, player of the series, obviously, massive positive for India going forward, does make that top order conversation that bit more, what to say, difficult, tough. They've got so many options in that top 4 now. Who'd you go with? That'll be interesting, heading to Australia. But Shreyas Iyer continues to impress. He's been named as Kolkata's captain for IPL 2022. And I'll tell you what, he's got a serious future ahead of him across formats as well. That's what's so impressive about Shreyas. So he's my first positive. And then I suppose the second one has to be the bowling attack because, you know, they got the job done in all 3 games. Yes, at the same time, Sri Lanka could have batted better. But I think in particular, the Indian seam attack did very well. The only thing that I would say with regards to the seamers, Venkatesh Iyer, quite expensive, to be honest. And when you are fulfilling that role, which is so integral in any T20 side, which is basically the batting all-rounder, something which Hardik Pandya has done so excellently for India over the course of so many years now, I do just question whether or not he is the right fit in that position long-term for India. And actually, Asjad, I'm going to flip that question onto yourself. Do you think he can be the long-term successor to Hardik? Because he's an excellent batting option. We've seen that in the IPL. We've seen glimpses of it in international cricket so far. But I just think the consistency with the ball isn't quite there in comparison to someone like a Hardik Pandya.
I 100% agree with that statement because And you might disagree with this, but for me, if you have Venkatesh Iyer, who's a batting all-rounder, you have Shardul Thakur, who's a bowling all-rounder, and then you have Hardik Pandya, who's an all-rounder, right? He could bowl, right? He could give you 4 overs and go for seven economy and pick up a wicket, and he could strike 60 of 24 if need be. Shardul Thakur will not do that on a consistent basis with the bat, but can do that on a wicket-taking basis with the ball, and Venkatesh Iyer, the opposite. Now, I think, and again, this is my take on this, Venkatesh Iyer has probably been put under so much pressure, so much scrutiny, because if you remember, after the West Indies series, is Venkatesh Iyer the correct replacement for Hardik Pandya? And everyone's talking about it. I'm like, he's played international cricket for less than 3 months, right? What, or 2 months, whatever it is. That is a lot of pressure to put on someone straight away. His IPL was great. But in the IPL, what was he doing? He was opening the batting and he was bowling a bit. Okay, that's how you could use him. And that brings me back to your initial point prior to your question. Their top order is where India is fully stacked. They've already got like 7 people fighting for 3 to 4 spots. Then you got Venkatesh Iyer in there. That's probably the reason why they want him to bat at 6, because they can't fit him up there. And they're like, this is a great talent, but we need him to bowl well. And that is where India is probably still looking for that all-rounding replacement. Shardul Thakur has worked. I'm not saying he's not good enough. All I'm saying is he's not as good with the bat as Hardik Pandya is. And unfortunately, Venkatesh Iyer is not as good with the ball as Hardik Pandya was. But there's no Hardik Pandya. So the only comparison I can make right now is Shardul to Venkatesh. And they both are great in one aspect and not as good in the other, and that's definitely going to hurt India, especially going to Australia. But I've got what they do have is not a special set of skills. If you get the reference, I like it. If you don't, that's fine. Sorry. They have a lot of pace attack. Their pace attack is absolutely loaded. No Bumrah, no Bhuvi in that final game. They played with Avish Khan, Mohammad Siraj, and Harshal Patel, right? They have Bhuvaneshwar Kumar. They have Jasprit Bumrah. Mohammad Shami is not even in the conversation right now, and they have Mohammad Shami. Then they have Shardul Thakur and Deepak Chahar. That's 8 seamers already. And then you have the option of Venkatesh Iyer, etc. So I think if Venkatesh Iyer plays, he plays as a part. He plays like a David Visa kind of role, that he'll get maybe an over, maximum 2 overs, but then he bats properly higher up in the order. That's my take on it, at least.
I'd agree with that long term. I see him as a top order option, to be fair. But then again, I suppose it's just a stopgap option for India because it's a gaping void to fill with Hardik Pandya. I mean, come on, he's one of the best all-rounders on the planet. So obviously, incredibly large boots to fill, and no one should be making direct comparisons at this stage of his career. But I just think, again, that is something which India might come undone with heading into Australia. You mentioned the seam options, though. That's something which India really do excel with. All of those options are ridiculous. The only question is, who ends up making the cuts for Australia? That's going to be incredibly difficult. The IPL may well come into consideration with regards to who gets that, and of course the series later on this year. But yeah, that is one serious seam attack, isn't it, for India? Bumrah, Shami should be in the mix as well. Bhuvaneshwar Kumar, who looks as though he's beginning to get some form back as well. Fingers crossed he can have a good IPL. Avesh Khan is just a natural wicket taker, as is Harshal Patel. Siraj offers you pretty much everything in T20 cricket, both at the top of the power play and, of course, at the death. That's been an interesting decision for India to make in Australia, but we'll have to wait and see what they go with. Only time will tell, I suppose.
Yeah. The pace they have is just really good to see from an Indian point of view, because you know this, you might not know this, but India has not had the best pace attack for many, many decades, right? They've always been medium paces, but since Ishant Sharma, at least from my memory, since Ishant Sharma, the pace that India has developed, the pace attack, it's just great to see. Even for a neutral, it's great to see their bowlers performing well and bowling 140 Ks an hour minimum, right, on a regular basis.
It's not just that, Ashjad. You mentioned that, and obviously the pace is a massive thing. I think what has sparked this seam revolution in India is the fact that not only have they only got one good bowler, one absolute gun, because if we think of the great India sides, the likes of Kapil Dev, Javagal Srinath, Ajit Agarkar, Zahir Khan, they were almost isolated options in a seam attack, which, as you mentioned, wasn't quite as potent. Skip forward to 2022 and just listen to all of those options. It's staggering, isn't it? You think that was the one Achilles heel of Indian cricket in the past. That heel's gone. Yes, they still have got issues with balancing the side, but the seam attack, the seam department is absolutely stacked. Someone, again, who could well be in the mix come the end of the year is Thangarazzu Natarajan with his left arm angle and the Yorker bowling. So they have really got an embarrassment of riches in the seam department. That is going to be absolutely vital coming to Australia. And again, I suppose on the flip side, that's something as well, which Sri Lanka could almost utilise as an example. Now, obviously, the resources are not the same as the BCCI, but maybe just investing in these absolute out-and-out speed demons, which Sri Lanka are trying to do, and just giving them as much experience as possible to set them on the right path in international cricket. Who knows? Something similar could happen, because with Sri Lanka at the moment, they've got some very good options here and there. I like Lahiru Kumara. I like Dushmantha Chamira, right? And obviously the spin attack is absolutely fantastic, but they just need a consistent battery of seam options. They don't have the same depth as a team like Pakistan or a team like India or a team like New Zealand or Australia. That's just something, again, if we look into the long term, hopefully Sri Lanka can, implement something in order to bridge that gap between the other nations.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what Sri Lanka does need to do, or needs to find a way to be able to implement that. Just to end things off, your Kamalka moment of the India-Sri Lanka T20 series.
That's a tough one, to be honest. I'm gonna have a little bit of a cop-out, to be honest. I'm not going to choose one specific moment. I'm actually just going to choose one player in particular, and that is Shreyas Iyer. He is my moment of the series because he is outstanding. How can you have a 174 strike rate, batting at number 3, and score 3 back-to-back 50s? It's ridiculous. There's dominance, and then there's that. It's just extraordinary. And again, he has really, really upped his stocks in this series. So I know it's not really a Kamalka moment. It's more like a Kamalka player of the series, but I'll go Shreyas Iyer. And the moment, in fact, can be Shreyas Iyer's rise to prominence in that Indian top 3. That can be my moment from this series.
I like that. I'm going to just add on a slight caveat for mine, because I've loved the way Shreyas Iyer and Ravindra Jadeja have batted together, because they do complement each other. They're both absolutely hammering it. I'll tell you, Ravi Jadeja, you didn't play a series against West Indies. You were out. You were resting. You were doing something else. You come in and score 45 of 18. Is that even fair? Right? And then you score what he scored in the third one. Again, another huge strike rate, over 200. So definitely both of those guys together for me have been the moment of this particular series. Unfortunately for Sri Lanka, they have got the brunt of all of this, everything we've talked about in this isolated series. Awesome. Brilliant. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you for your time. Really do appreciate it. For everyone watching, please do like, share, and subscribe. Do check out the Cricket Connoisseur on every single platform. Do check out the County Cricket Podcast. It is everywhere. You type it on Google, you will find it. And then you will listen to it and then realize how good of an anchor and a host Aaron actually is. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, everyone. And until next time.